What's up, everyone? What's up? Welcome to Rukshan on X. Thanks for joining in on the comments very early, guys. I hope you can hear me clearly. Let me know if there's any issues with the audio and you're having trouble hearing me. But I'm in my home studio back in Melbourne, out of Canberra for a few more weeks. I'll be back in Canberra later on, but I do have more of a stable setup. So hopefully you can hear me clearly. I do need to change this. I think this cheap Amazon mic. Some people are complaining about it stuttering. Hopefully it's okay. But that's a good question, James. What are we talking about? I'm talking about a few things, but obviously a few big topics that have been in the news and that I've covered on my socials as well. To some people, getting very, I would say, full of soy about it, having a bit of a go at me. A lot of people unfollowing me as well, which is half of the course for someone like me. This happens here and there because we have, very controversial opinions sometimes, and not everyone's going to agree with you. And that's just how it is. Thanks, Monica, for the clarification that you can hear loud and clear. I'll just read some of the comments first before we jump into it, guys. So we got a comment from Mr. I bought Sri Lankan True Cinnamon today. I put on an Australian drink. I shall call him Rukshan. Perfect. I think cinnamon is actually native to Sri Lanka. Like that's kind of where the cinnamon trade originally started, and that's why it was one of the prize jewels in the for the colonialists, whether it's the Dutch, the Portuguese, or the British. So lots of cinnamon in Sri Lanka. Tracy says we are screwed. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons we're screwed in Australia. I do agree with you. We are pretty much screwed. That's true. Come visit Goulburn when you are in Canberra next. I mean, that's a good suggestion. The Crooked Trail. This Canberra kind of sucks the life out of me. It's just very weird sometimes being up there, but I will take that on note. James Jet says, thanks for fighting for all of us over the past 5 years. Look, I mean, I have always just been myself. A lot of people criticize me, but I have always just been myself. I've always just shared my views and my opinions. And I accept that not everyone will agree with the things that I say. I'm not trying to change people's minds about, agreeing with me. I'm just telling people what I think. And a lot of what I do is just the things that I'm interested in and what I think. So sometimes it might align with your views, sometimes it might not. That's just how the world is. And it's just sad and weird seeing a lot of people who talk about free speech and cry about free speech as this being this massive, ultimate thing that we must fight for, all of a sudden get upset when people in this country exercise their free speech. And there's a lot of things that upset me, and I don't get carried away with it. I mention it as a criticism or a critique, but beyond that, I don't lose sleep over it. But some people do get very caught up. Let's have a look at what other people. How many Hamas-loving lefty lunatics are here tonight? Well, I mean, look, people that support Hamas or support the state of Palestine, people are welcome to support the things that they want to support in this country, as long as it's legal. Now, Hamas is, of course, a designated terrorist organization, so I'd be worried if you were openly supporting Hamas in this country. But yeah, Rukshan Fernando, a right-wing conservative. Look, I would say I'm conservative. My views, if you look at the political ideology and the spectrum of my views, yes, they do lean more right. Sometimes I would be more of a centrist on most topics. I'm definitely not a far-left lunatic progressive. I don't believe in a lot of the things that they're spouting. Rukshan Fernando, don't lie. You love shifting opinions with your conservatives, or my conversations maybe. I don't know what you're trying to say, David. You have a few issues with grammar there. I don't want to convince people to agree with me. I just want people to hear what my thoughts are. And I love hearing your views and your thoughts, and maybe sometimes it helps inform me. I do have a lot of strong opinions on a lot of things, and that's what leads me to do the things that I do. Now, I had a very comfortable life a few years ago. The fact that I went out there and covered a lot of the COVID things had nothing to do with what anyone else was telling me. It was based on my very strong views and opinions about what I thought was right and wrong in terms of government interference within the media landscape, and also the fact that we were all impacted by what's happening. So that has a massive impact, on everybody, including myself. And so I made those decisions. No one told me to go to do that, to change anyone's mind, and things just happened naturally. Tracy, I will actually get to this topic. Burning the flag isn't on. So, yeah, I'm definitely going to talk about the flag burning. So I think that's a topic that I'm very passionate about, because I don't agree with that type of action, even though I know it's legal. So we'll get to a bit of that as well. Taylor says, I never thought I'd be a conservative, but it's hard not to be these crazy days. Yeah, I mean, when you look at what's happening around the world and you kind of just use a bit of common sense, it's really just not even being a conservative or right wing. A lot of the things that I talk about and a lot of my views and points of view is basically just common sense. It's just things that we've been doing as people for maybe thousands of years, perhaps. Things when we talk about gender, for instance, or sex, man and woman. I mean, these are common sense issues which we've had to now go into all sorts of lengths because of the deranged views that have become normalized within our society. Now, again, people would have disagreements about this as well. But look, guys, thanks for joining me to in on this show again, Rukshan on X. This is a very kind of casual chat show that I do where I look at some of the news stories that I've been covering, what's happening on X, especially because I really still do believe that X is where the news happens. Like Elon Musk did just share today that in Italy, it's blurred at the moment, but X is the number one news app in Italy, and it's the number one news app I think in most parts of the world. So X does have a very big influential aspect in terms of getting news out there to the public. You know, a lot of the images that you see coming out from the media and news coverage, it gets put on X first. So I use X as a major source of news gathering and information gathering. Yeah, definitely I'm going to be talking about define gender. I'm not going to be doing that today. A big move on the Harbour Bridge yesterday. Look, I'll talk about the Harbour Bridge protest because people are confused, I think, about my views, and they attribute all types of things to me because I just happen to be, friends with a few Jewish people, so that's problematic to people in Australia for some reason. Now, when I say people in Australia, I'm saying a certain subsect of people that take great umbrage to my relationships with Jewish people, which is, insane because you want to have multiculturalism, you want to have diversity in Australia, then we're going to intermingle and have friends with all types of people from around the world. And just because you happen to be a part of the world, from a part of the world that doesn't agree with these people, doesn't mean I can't be friends with them in Australia. Either you want all this crap or you don't. So that's my views on that. Mahesh Pereira, another Sri Lankan, says, bro, proud Sri Lankan, I get very upset when they burn the Australian flag, which I will die for. Now, that is the type of patriotism that, Mahesh, thank you for the comment. I believe in that similar type of sentiment. Now, people might say that's crazy, but, the Australian flag actually means a lot to, people like myself, for instance. Of course, it means so much to people who have been Australians for generations and their ancestors and the things that they've built and fought for in this country. Now, of course, there's a complicated, at times controversial history in Australia. Not like any other, most places in the world have these type of histories, so it's not unique in that aspect. But the flag does mean a lot, and it does upset people when it's burnt. And one of the things about free speech and freedom to do these kind of acts, yeah, it allows people to burn the flag, but the people that do burn the flag and their reasoning for it and their criticism of it is also apt. So if you want to have the freedom to burn the flag, then you are also going to be critiqued by people like me. And it's not me saying you don't have permission to burn the flag or you don't have a right to burn the flag. It's me saying this is why we're saying that it's wrong to burn the flag. So Mahesh, thanks for that comment. I'll definitely get to that flag. But look, let me just go through some of these comments first and see how I can see how we can get to where is Chris Coveries? That was very entertaining. If you guys missed our debate, so-called, I mean, you can't debate Chris Coveries because he whispers into the mic and then he talks really slowly and he goes off on tangents. Right? This is not a serious individual to have a conversation like this and debate with because and he brings up transcripts. I don't want to go through this all with you guys tonight. You can go watch the debate that me and Avi Yemeni did with Chris Coveries. You can see him bringing up transcripts. Now, imagine Chris Coveries on Channel 7 News or with Piers Morgan doing a serious interview and he brings up the transcripts. I mean, it's just ridiculous to bring up transcripts as you're talking of the text that you just said 5 seconds ago. Complete nonsense. Guys, I'm loving all the comments. You can also leave super chats on YouTube if you want. So, I'm very liberal, like I say, every episode that I have. So whether you do a super chat or not, I will interact with your comments because I want you all to join in. But if you want to support the show and help out in that sense as well, you can do super chats on YouTube. That would be greatly appreciated, but feel no obligation at this moment. Maconomics says, to be fair, Chris was interrupted a lot during the podcast. He's a knob, so look, I understand that perspective, and it's not about interrupting Chris, but there's no choice. Like, you cannot take a conversation and whisper into the mic and talk in riddles and go veer off the topic, because you'll be there for like hours and hours and hours talking to someone like that. You have to be very, very direct. Now, we're having a debate tomorrow night. I'm going to be moderating that debate between Avi Yemeni and John Ruddick from the Libertarian Party, the New South Wales leader. I'm going to talk about a little bit about that later as well, but that'll be very interesting. Now, I think John Ruddick is someone that talks very directly. So if you watch that particular debate, I think that'll be more free-flowing and less interruptions, and two people just having a conversation, an intellectual conversation sometimes, a serious conversation, and maybe a fun conversation, depending on the topics that they're talking about. But it should be a direct, conversational debate, not this trickery, not bringing up transcripts, not going off in tangents. You can't debate someone like that. Simon says, I'll just go to Palestine issue from this. Palestine is more important than a marathon. So look, over the weekend and leading up to last weekend on Sunday, the biggest topic in Australia, right? The biggest topic. We have a lot of issues happening in this country, but the biggest topic in this country was the march on the Sydney Harbour Bridge. So let me bring up some visuals from that. And that was the pro-Palestinian march on the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And people wanted to obviously march there. There was a big push by the pro-Palestinian movement to march on the Sydney Harbour Bridge. The New South Wales government and the police said, no, you can't march on the Sydney Harbour Bridge because obviously the logistics, it's going to bring the city to a standstill, all this kind of stuff. Went to the Supreme Court. The court said it ruled in favour of the pro-Palestinian movement and the protesters and whoever else was on that case, and said, no, they can march across the bridge at very short notice. So that all happened, right? So, people have opinions about that. Now, let me just show you some footage from that protest. Okay, protest rally. It's a few things that happened that day. So let's just bring that up.
Are you coming to the tree? They strung up a man. They say we're gonna free. Strange things that happen here.
I just cut the music there, but you can see, I think the crowd estimates, the official estimates from the police and government people and all that kind of stuff was about 90,000 to 100,000 people at any given moment participating in that march across the bridge in support of what's happening, what they claim are atrocities in Palestine. And this, you can see the footage there. It's for all the reporting. It was a very peaceful march. There were some issues here and there with police, crowd control issues. That's about the extent of any type of drama that happened during the protest. So look, it's a very successful in terms of visually, in terms of getting people together and participating in a march like this. This is a movement that has been very successful in growing participation in this movement. You have to give them that. So in Australia, it's very hard to get people to actually get off their bums and turn up, especially on a day when the weather's really bad, for instance, in such numbers. And you can tell a lot of people are passionate about this issue. A lot of people care about this issue, and a lot of people are willing to put themselves out there in this type of environment to show their support of whichever cause they believe in. And that's great. We live in Australia. It's a free society. We should have the freedom to tell our government, to tell people things that we care about, and the issues that we care about and the issues that we want them to focus on. That is all great. And I think a lot of people misrepresent perhaps my views or the views of other conservatives and people like myself and others that have certain views about what's happening over there as a way that we're trying to stifle free speech or stop free speech or stop this from happening. And I don't think that's the case. I think most people that support the right to protest have no issue whatsoever with this type of protest occurring. Now, obviously, in terms of the location, the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and the logistics of it and the inconvenience that it causes to the city, sure. Do you want it to be something that any given day that people can just rock up on the Harbour Bridge and cause chaos? I don't think that's necessarily a good thing for the city of New South Wales. But has a precedent been set? Now, the New South Wales Premier Chris Minns says there's no precedent that's been set. People still have to apply in the appropriate way to get a permit to do one of these protests in the future if they want to. But it really goes to the question of, would the government then disallow other types of protests to happen on the bridge to this scale within a week's notice? What is the decision of the judge when the judge makes that call and they take into all these things into consideration? For instance, this is for a foreign conflict. Let's be honest. This is for something that's happening in a foreign country. If Australians in Australia, this is a point that I made, wanted to walk on the Sydney Harbour Bridge in protest against the mass immigration issues, would the same judge who can use her discretion or his discretion allow that protest to go ahead? And it's not very clear what that answer is. And personally, I think that's the problem. I think any group then, if you're going to allow certain groups to march on the Sydney Harbour Bridge, it should be free and open to all Australians then to participate in protests where they get to use the symbolism of an Australian icon for their cause. Right? Don't get me wrong. That's at the end of the day, the thing about using the Sydney Harbour Bridge is because of its symbolic value to the Australian identity. Right? The moment that you use the bridge for whatever cause, right, and it's been used in the past for other causes. I think there's been pride parades on it and things like this. Right. The moment you use the Sydney Harbour Bridge, it is almost a statement that this is a representation of Australia. Okay, that is the propaganda style, the view of something like this. Now that might not be true. People might say, well, this is only 90,000 people. This is only 100,000 people. It's a drop in the bucket. But in terms of propaganda value, that is the value of the bridge. Now, should other movements in Australia, let's say, something that I did for a long time, cover anti-vax protests. Do you think in the future that the judges in Sydney will give permission for anti-vaxxers, for instance, to use the Sydney Harbour Bridge to say that, this group of 30,000 anti-vax protesters is a representation of the Australian will? Most likely not. And that is the reality. Like, I think people have to accept that a lot of these decisions which are made are not a reflection of the true intent about the right to protest or the freedom of speech. A lot of these are highly political. A lot of these go into calculations about social cohesion, disharmony. What happens then if these groups still turn up anyway? So all of these, I think, factors are taken into consideration. But I don't believe that all types of protest movements would be allowed this type of use of the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Now, this might be tested in the future. Some group might put in a Form 1 request or whatever it's called in New South Wales to do this. In Melbourne, for instance, there was a same attempt to do a protest on the King Street Bridge here in the city. But, Melbourne doesn't have a permit system for protests, so the police just blocked it off. And that protest never took place on the bridge, but the police ended up blocking the bridge anyway. So all of this is a little bit weird. I do have some more views on, my personal views on some of the things that happened in the protest, and I get what people are saying to me in my comments. Instagram, like all these people saying, "Rukshan, I'm unfollowing you. You can't just point out the extremists at these protests. I'm going to unfollow you because you're trying to, be like mainstream media and show how everyone's an extremist." No, not at all. I'm just showing you that how these particular movements sometimes, especially this pro-Palestine movement, whatever the sentiment is of people of marching for humanity, a lot of these organizers are at the essence anti-Australian in the things that they promote, the things that they say. I do not give a crap, right? Personally, as far as foreign wars go, for me the most important thing is Australia. And when we have the rise of extremism in Australia, that is very concerning to me. So no matter what the cause is happening overseas, I think what it means for Australia and seeing extremism, being accepted in Australia or normalized should be concerning to all Australians. That is my baseline, what this means for Australia going forward. So I'll touch on some of those. There is 3 super chats, so I'll get to that first. This is from 0555 Pink. Just want to say thank you for all you do and tell us tomorrow how you and Avi became mates. I'll tell you now, I just became friends with Avi through obviously the COVID times, and you're kind of in the trenches together doing a lot of that coverage. And a lot of the times, obviously, you're misunderstood as well. And it's like any workplace. When you work with people, you have a shared common interest, and you talk to people and you become friends. So it's more of a natural thing. Baseline Benny says, "Thanks, Rukshan. Love your work, mate. Cheers, mate. Thanks for the support." Would they allow an Australia Day celebration march? I mean, DMAC, that is a great question, right? Would they allow an Australia Day celebration march on the Sydney Harbour Bridge going forward? They would most likely probably allow like not Anzac Day, a Invasion Day march. I see that being more likely in our current context. Whether it could be used for Australia Day, I don't know. I'm still not convinced that this particular protest sets a precedent to the extent of them allowing any type of protest to happen on the Sydney Harbour Bridge. I think it'll still be very political, and whatever happened here with the judge was very political. That's my personal belief. You can disagree with me, but I think that's kind of what happened. Now, in terms of my personal views, and I've shared a lot of this on my X feed and on my Facebooks and on my Instagram. If you follow me, Instagram is a lot of where the drama is. Instagram, a lot of people are saying they're unfollowing me because I shared these posts. X is a bit more not as soft as Instagram. I'm a bit more hardened now because I spend a lot of time on X. It's a very rough place. Like if you see the intense way that you're scrutinized, obviously the crazy racism that I go through on X and all these kind of things. When I see the soy on Instagram and people having a sook, this Instagram is like for people like looking at like clothes and models and like I don't know. It's just a slightly different type of platform. So I do understand that people there get a bit more emotional and a bit more emotive. Again, I'm not trying to drag people down. I'm just saying it's just a very different type of platform in terms of political discourse. And I don't share too much on Instagram in terms of my politics. It's what I do, especially on something like this, it does trigger people. So let me show you what I shared today. And this is some of my concerns that I had. So let me just bring up this post. I'll just turn off the blur for a second. All right, can you guys see that? So look, like I said, overwhelmingly people were not doing this at this particular protest, but there were elements of this. So whether it's these kind of extremist Islamic symbols, whether it's people equating Israel to Nazism or using the swastika or Nazi symbolism, whether it's these, people are saying this image of Khomeini, the Iranian dictator, is fake, but no, there's plenty of video of it. It's very real. There's an individual carrying it around. These type of examples of extremism, and this is just some. There's heaps more of these videos. There's videos of chants and all sorts of other nonsense that people are carrying on about. These acts are not in the spirit of who we are as Australians. I completely believe, right? I do not support this type of acts. I do not support terrorism. I don't support terrorists. I'll never support terrorists. I'm not from Israel. I'm not Arab. I'm not Muslim. I have no affinity to, by default, because of some blood feud or some historical nonsense, to take sides. I don't care. I'm Australian. I have a Catholic Christian background. And my worldview doesn't allow me to support terrorists. There's just no way, guys, that I'm going to support terrorist causes. I'm not going to support the causes of Hamas, a terrorist organization that's their acts include taking civilian hostages and starving them. Yes, on the flip side, I do concede there could be war crimes happening during these wars. I've seen many different wars around the world, including in my home country, where I believe potentially the government was involved in war crimes. I'm not oblivious to these things being a possibility, but I do not support terrorist regimes, including Hamas. And I do not think that the West, it serves the interests of the West to negotiate with terrorists. I don't think that. And that's why I support President Donald J. Trump, because the Americans, Donald Trump, has taken a very hardline stance against these terrorists. And I think that's how it's got to be. You cannot normalize terrorist acts, and you cannot normalize these terrorist regimes using hostages as bargain chips. And I'll never support that. But do I support the right of people in this country? Lots of Muslim migrants that call Australia home, and the Israelis who have their views, to protest and fight for their causes. I mean, they're allowed to do that here. Do I wish they did something else? Yes, I wish they just cared and loved this country more than anything else. But of course, they're concerned about what's happening overseas, and fair enough. Fair enough. We have, certain rights in this country to protest, and they can exercise those rights, and that's what's happening. But yeah, I'm not going to support terrorists. There's no chance I'm going to support terrorists, whether people follow me or not, because I don't support their particular side in some sort of ancient blood feud. I don't care. It's like me asking these people, which side in Sri Lanka do you support? Which ethnic group do you support during this clash? And then I'm going to decide who I like and who I don't like. I don't care what group in Sri Lanka you support. I don't care what ethnicities and ethnic conflicts you support in Africa or other parts of Asia. And I certainly don't care about ethnic conflicts in the Middle East to the extent that it impacts my worldview on what it means to be in Australia, protecting Australian rights and freedoms, and ensuring that we have a civil society here which is not tainted by these same evils, really, the evils of these other parts of the world, of people who for thousands of years have not managed to solve these conflicts because of just hatred amongst themselves. And a lot of that hatred now is spewing over into Australia. And they don't want to tell you this out plainly and out clearly, right? They think you're all stupid. They think the average Australian, especially white Australians, they think they're stupid, that they will just go along because of sympathy and emotion and propaganda to support these evil causes and evil regimes. And I'm just not falling for it. I just don't care to that extent. What I do care about is ensuring that in Australia, I don't have to be subject to this nonsense. And that's what I fight for. So when I talk about people bringing in this terrorism here, when we talk about things like these symbols, seeing these kind of ISIS-style flags or Taliban flags in this country, where our soldiers fight against this type of nonsense, and people in this country die for fighting against this, fighting against Nazis, whether it's these insane symbols, the Iranian regime, which oppresses all types of people, especially women in that country, and of course these absolute morons who are most likely left-wing, progressive. University taught white kids most of the time they are. That's what these left-wing Marxist communists are. Burning the Australian flag. It's disgraceful. And it's emboldening others to, participate in that behavior and normalize it. And no matter what these organizers say of these pro-Palestinian movements, they enable that type of rhetoric because they talk about it in their speeches about how this country is not legitimate. They talk about destroying Australia. When the Nasser Mashni or whatever, the president of APAN and one of the lead organizers of these protest movements, was first asked about condemning the burning of the Australian flag, right? Just condemning the burning of the Australian flag. He would not condemn it. He said it's just a piece of silk. He said this flag is just a piece of silk. Well, this idiot, right? This moron, un-Australian idiot, the reason that he can march on the Sydney Harbour Bridge is because of that piece of silk in peace and live in this country and participate in these democratic rights is because of that piece of silk of the Australian flag. And these people who are sympathetic to terrorist causes in many instances will never admit that, will never respect that, and want all of us to hate Australia. And I'm just not going to participate in that. Whether you follow me or like me or whatever, I don't care. I'm not going to participate in these acts of terrorism and hatred towards this country. And no matter the good intentions of the people at that march, marching for humanity, the truth is a lot of the people organizing that movement hate this country, openly hate this country, want to abolish Australia, and I could never stand with that type of sentiment. Let's just get to this super chat. This is from 0555 Pink. I got to breathe. I just talked for too long. Yes, I'm having McDonald's. The organizers posted that it was not about humanity at all. They said it was about defeating Israel 100%. And nope, you don't think all of us bag you. No, I don't think all of you bag me. Look, I mean, I'm realistic. We live in Australia. We have a large, Muslim population. And by default, they have a certain view. It's just how it is. That's just the world. I come from a country which has, my parents' country, the heritage of my upbringing, of my parents' upbringing. There's lots of different ethnicities there. These same arguments have been happening for hundreds, if not thousands of years. I understand these arguments. So I'm not going to be swayed by it in the sense of it determines who I am. One of the great things about Australia is that despite all of this, we do have an opportunity and a chance to live in peace. to live and accept these differences amongst us and work towards a shared common goal. But the more that we go on down this path, the less likely that becomes, and the more divisive, the more fractured we are, the less that we are united under the Australian flag as one people, and we start introducing these foreign things into this land, right? Things that have nothing really to do with who we are. That doesn't. Don't let these people fool you. It has nothing to do with Australia. It doesn't. Whether it's from Hamas side, Palestine, Israel, doesn't have anything to do with Australia. The more that we introduce this to, attack our social cohesion, the less off we are as people in this country. So I definitely believe that. Another super chat here. Rukshan, is it true you support LGBTQI marriage, adoption, trans in bathroom, enforcing it in primary schools, etc.? Also, you, Avi, and Joel and Babette, Oz people. No, I don't support all that. I have no issue with people doing adults. Adults can do whatever they want in their life, in their bed, whatever they want. I don't give a shit. As soon as you start encroaching into spaces like, children's spaces, kids' spaces, I think that's very problematic. That should be completely, we should fight back against that, and that should not be normalized. And of course, once you get to this hysterical gender stuff and, erasing women and denying women their womanhood, right? By saying that men can be women, I don't support any of that nonsense. But if people want to do things, and love whoever they want to love and do all this kind of stuff, fine, do it, right? That's up. We have that freedom, right? Whatever you might think about that, we have that freedom. That's true. Let's see what happens if we burn a rainbow flag. I mean, I remember when the women's rights rally happened in Melbourne. The next day, Daniel Andrews, after that, he went up and he put up the trans flag in front of the Victorian State Parliament as a symbol of defiance of the Victorian people in the face of women marching for their rights. So, of course, if a rainbow flag or a trans flag was burnt by women at a women's rights rally, for instance, there would be all hell to pay, and ABC and all these networks would be losing their minds over it. Australian flag, it's not the same thing. So let's just catch up on some of these comments, guys. I did miss a lot. I was just kind of off on a tangent there. And I'll bring up some other posts as well that I shared. So this is a comment from NASA Mashni. Have a look. These are these idiots burning the Australian flag. And yes, like people have said, it's lawful. It's lawful to burn the flag. It's lawful to burn the flag. But this is one of the organizers of that movement saying, you know what, it's just a piece of silk. It doesn't matter, right? All the while enjoying the safety and the democracy and the freedom of this country to protest his cause for the freedom of people that he believes deserve it in Palestine, right? For his cause, fighting for their cause, using the freedom in this country to march over our biggest landmark, the Sydney Harbour Bridge, using the court system to win through that freedom and democracy that we have in this country, and then turning around and saying that the thing that represents all of that as a symbol of our nation, the flag, is just a piece of silk. It's meaningless. All right, and this same idiot was on the Harbour Bridge that day, and I'll show you what he said that day because I saved it. I'm just going through my feed here. Let's just go to the normal one while I find it. I'll show you what he said that day. That day he said, I'll just turn I'll fix this blurring. It just blurs everything. He said, whose bridge? Our bridge. Meaning the Sydney Harbour Bridge is claimed in the name of Palestine and his particular movement. So it's their bridge now. And then he said, from the river to the sea, which is, according to some Israelis, Jews, it's a genocidal rant, a chant about taking all of Israel. And then he said specifically to Australia, see, this blood feud stuff, I don't care about. They can solve that. But this one here, always was, always will be. What do you think NASA Majni is referring to there? And why do you think he's okay with the Australian flag being burnt when he says always was, always will be? Now, I listen to these guys all the time during their speeches that they make because they put it online because they're very proud of it. And what they talk about is decolonizing Australia, abolishing the nation of Australia, that Australia was, it's not Australia. It's Aboriginal land, like they claim Palestine is, it's theirs. So therefore, what do you think that means when you join all those dots together? What do you think these people are saying? And why do you think it's impossible for someone like this, who wants the support of Australians for his own cause, but doesn't want to condemn the flag of this nation being burned? Why do you think that means to him when he says always was, always will be Aboriginal land? He's talking about Australia, not Palestine, not anywhere else. He's talking about here. And these same communist Marxist types and these same extremist Islamists that participate in this have no issue with one day also marching to destroy this country in the same manner. And I could never, ever support this type of extremist view against the Australian nation, this state, especially a country that has done so much for many people, especially people like himself. In many instances, refugees and asylum seekers from around the world who enjoy the freedom and the privilege of living in this country and manage to shut down half of it in Sydney, at least that city, to protest for a foreign cause, and they will not respect the flag. I could never respect people like this. And if you want to unfollow me because of that and because I call out these idiots, go for it. Go for it. It's up to you. Let's see how many other super chats. No other super chats. Let's just get to some of the comments here. This is actually a good question. How do you know the person that burned the flag was a genuine protester? They've been using agent provocateurs, and now we know who's been doing it. Even the friendly rallies, we see you. It's true. A lot of the time, these idiots that burn the flags are either trying to provoke something. A lot of the time, they're from Antifa. Don't get me wrong, these Antifa types love burning the Australian flag. They do it all the time. It's in their little manifestos about destroying the country. So look, they're joined at the hip. But beyond the burning of the flag, let's say it was some random burning the flag, then why is it so hard for the organizers, right? Again, I'm just going with what was said in that comment. Why is it so hard for the organizers to then not condemn the burning of the flag? It's because they agree with these groups. Leading pro-Palestinian advocate fails to condemn burning of the flag, of the Australian flag. He said it's just a piece of silk, right? So let's say like it was some random that burned the flag, why is it that these individuals can never condemn the burning of the Australian flag? Well, they agree with it, and they want the support of these groups. And if you want to go on conspiracies and be like, oh, it was some paid agent, and that could all be possibly true. Who knows? Who cares? But it shouldn't rule out the fact that this individual could have easily condemned it. So look, it's his right not to condemn it, but when a leading organizer does not condemn such an act, it means that it paints the whole movement in that particular light, and they are responsible for that at the end of the day. Of course, there's some. Julie says, how is Antifa allowed to exist in Australia? I mean, look, they have a very strong movement here in Victoria. They're pretty much, the boots of the Victorian Labor government. They don't want to pretend. They don't want to, admit to this. But these Victorian socialists, Antifa, these types, they're all a part of that same type of labor movement. It is what it is. All right, guys. I just want to put up a video from David Limbrick. So there has been a lot of back and forth with a particular politician from New South Wales, John Ruddick, who is a libertarian. Now, John Ruddick posted, I think, the day before the protest that he would. Well, let me just bring up his post. Let me bring up John Ruddick's post, and then I'll put what David Limbrick's. Not response to John Ruddick, but just response to people asking him questions. So John Ruddick is the New South Wales leader, I believe, of the Libertarian Party. He's a member of the New South Wales State Parliament, whereas Limbrick is a member of the Victorian Libertarians and the State Parliament here. But John Ruddick put up a particular post that ended up with him getting a lot of flack for. So this is what he said. This is what John Ruddick said. Let's bring it up. Turn this blur off. John Ruddick says, I was proud to march against COVID lockdowns. Tomorrow I'll be proud to march against what can only be described as a genocide. See you tomorrow. It may be raining, but don't let that deter you. It's raining bullets in Gaza. And he put up, look, the Libertarians very much support the right to protest, and he was very vocal about this. But I think this took a lot of people off guard, especially Libertarian supporters. I've seen a lot of people commenting that they've left the party and so on. So John Ruddick made this comment, and there's been a lot of back and forth. Tomorrow, actually, I'm just letting you guys know early. I said this earlier in the show. Tomorrow, John Ruddick is actually coming on the Opposition podcast to debate with Avi Yemeni. I will be moderating. It will not be like the protest, not the debate that we had with Chris Coveries. You can watch it here. So tomorrow night, if you want to watch Avi Yemeni versus John Ruddick on this particular topic, all right, I'm going to more so moderate and control the chat and do moderating of the super chats and comments and things like this. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m., guys, tune into the Opposition podcast. You can see the Libertarian leader in New South Wales going up against Avi Yemeni on this particular topic. That's tomorrow, 7 p.m. So John Ruddick said this, but today David Limbrick, who many Victorians will know from the COVID era as well, who was a very staunch supporter of people's individual freedoms and rights during COVID, he put out some sentiments around, his views on this particular issue. And I thought it was very good the way that he did it. And I think that's the way that most Australian politicians should probably approach this issue, especially state parliamentarians. But let's have a listen to what David Limbrick had to say, so I can have a little bit of a drink as well and get some fluids into me as I lose my breath. 1 second. Bring up Limbrick.
Recent events have sort of compared. My name's David Limbrick from the Libertarian Party Victoria. I don't normally talk about international issues much because I'm a state MP, but recent events have sort of compelled me to make a bit of an exception. Like all decent people throughout the world, I was absolutely horrified when I saw the depraved acts of violence that happened on October 7th in Israel by Hamas. What was even more shocking, though, was to see in my own country, in Australia, people soon after this celebrating what had happened. Absolutely confusing to most decent Australians, I would imagine. But we have to think about why did these groups like Hamas do this? Why did they carry out this terror attack, and what was the tactic? Well, the tactic was to try and provoke an oversized response that then they could use for propaganda purposes. And that's exactly what happened. Almost immediately after, there was a massive propaganda effort emanating from all sorts of places within the Middle East. And it's continued to this day. And we're talking social media, mainstream media, bots, all sorts of things. The other thing that happened is that there was these protests, and they've been happening pretty much every week ever since October 7th happened, and you get this sort of mix of Marxists and Islamic extremists going through the city every week. We also saw attacks on synagogues and Jewish people, graffiti throughout the city, and this has been absolutely relentless over this entire period of time. The reality is in Victoria, in Melbourne, we've had a religious domination, Jewish people, who've been relentlessly attacked to the point where they fear going into the city. They are scared to go outside, and this is just totally unacceptable in a free society. Libertarians believe in freedom of religion. People who are peaceful and do not aggress on other people should be allowed to carry out their business in peace. But we have this situation in Victoria now where Jewish people feel scared to go into the city on the weekends. I met with one group of Jewish people who I stood by in the city and faced off against these protesters because they wanted to show that they weren't scared of them, that they're allowed to go into the city too, and I fully support that. What do these protesters really want? Well, we can look at their words and what they say. I mean, one of the things that they say is from the river to the sea. What they mean when they say that is the land from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, which is currently where Israel is. What they mean is the destruction of Israel. What do they mean when they say death to the IDF? Well, what would happen if the IDF ceased to exist? Well, that would end up with the destruction of Israel. What do they mean when they attack anti-Zionists or attack Zionists? Well, Zionism really just means people who believe that the state of Israel should exist. So again, they're attacking people that think the state of Israel should exist. But many of them go further than that. I mean, there were signs that I saw yesterday saying, abolish Australia. I mean, many Marxists hate Australia itself. They hate our own country. They see it as a colonial relic. And so many of these Marxists, what they really want is, the destruction of the West. And that explains a lot of why they're standing side by side with these Islamic extremists. But in the end, I'm a Victorian politician and I'm not going to solve the problems of the Middle East. The Victorian government's not going to solve the problems of the Middle East, and nor is the Australian government. What I need to focus on, which is what I've always focused on, which is protecting the rights of Victorians. And that's what I've always done, and that's what I'll continue to do.
Look, I just wanted to share that again. That's David Limbrick from Victoria, the Libertarian de facto leader here in Victoria. And the reason I'm showing you that is because the Libertarian leader in New South Wales, John Ruddick, has a very different view and opinion, and he's now come out and said that, all this stuff about genocide and so on. So there is a debate happening tomorrow. That was a Libertarian view that I just showed you from Victoria, David Limbrick, who I think, has more kind of libertarian principles in terms of explaining the way that he sees the issue. John Ruddick also believes his particular view is broadly a part of this libertarian view set. So it'll be interesting tomorrow to see this debate. So that's 7 p.m. Make sure you guys join in on YouTube. You'll be able to do comments that will appear on the screen, as well as do super chats, and I'll try to get some of those questions to Avi and John Ruddick as I'll be meditating. So, not meditating, moderating. It's so late. I'm pretty tired after work. Maybe I do need to meditate, and then things will be better with everything that's happening around us in the world, right? I just had a few other questions here that popped up that I'll answer. I'll do my best to answer. Maybe you missed my earlier answers on this. So Paul says, we must respect free speech even if people do things we don't like. Your anger with burning the flag will lose our free speech. You think that the government is to be trusted with making new laws. Again, I respect the free speech attribute of around this particular debate. If people want to burn the flag and they want to burn the flag, okay, they burn the flag. But I think it opens it up to criticism, that we can criticize these people, especially people that hold particular positions or lead movements that, I believe want to take advantage of the Australian people, in a way, right, in terms of the way that we view the world, and then also support things like burning our flag, and they're not honest about that, right? If you hate the country, if you hate the flag, just honestly, openly come out and say it, right? Don't pretend and hide behind it. Just come out and say it. So it's not about stopping people from burning the flag, but I do believe if you do burn the flag, the Australian flag, especially as you believe it's a symbol of hate, then you open yourself up to criticism, and that's fair. Like, if you want to burn the flag and people criticize you, deal with it. You shouldn't be just because it's free speech doesn't mean people can't criticize you for that. And Maconomics says, as long as we can burn the LGBT flag too, mate, I don't think you'll be in a lot of trouble for that. Things are a lot different. You can burn the Australian flag, but they'll get you on some type of hate speech thing for that particular flag. So just some more super chats. Abby, thanks for joining in again for another one of my episodes, and of course being a regular on the Opposition podcast. Abby says, I feel really deflated after Sunday. Maybe I need a break from social media. It's seriously alarming what is happening to Australia. And again, not everyone in Australia, no matter how people try to portray it, whenever we have protest movements, I think people try to portray things as like, oh, this is a representation of what everyone is thinking. It's not. There are definitely going to be people that disagree with you. I mean, that was the case during COVID. As is happening to me right now, people saying, Rukshan, I'm going to unfollow you, and I'm going to turn your stuff off because you're not supporting this particular cause. Well, during COVID, I had people like family and friends that I know call me up and say, hey, Rukshan, don't do what you're doing. We're going to disavow you, and we're not going to talk to you. We're going to unfollow you. Like, it's the same crap. It's literally the same crap on a different level, though, because obviously the day-to-day impact of what's happening in Israel, Gaza, whatever. It doesn't impact us day to day on the ground here in terms of what we do in our lives necessarily. Not everyone, at least. That makes a difference, but it's as divisive in a way, and there is an aspect of it where people are trying to force you to take particular positions, and I don't believe that you necessarily have to take a position. I think a lot of us can take an Australia first position and do what's in the best interest, of Australia and this country, and your views around this can be guided, right, and be molded by what it is that we value as our moral and ethical basis in a country like Australia, and more so broadly Western values, right? I think a lot of foreign values, for instance, no matter how great that people might think those countries are, if they do think it's so great, they're probably better off going back there and living there, really. But as far as I'm concerned, if you're living in the West, if you're living in Australia, then there's something superior in terms of the value system here, right? The benefits of living under such a system in this country, and you should respect that and abide by those values. So if you got foreigners trying to tell you, hey, support this particular side of this war because of some ancient blood feud, no, it's not always in your interest as an Australian. That's my belief. And 055 Pink says, love you, Avi, Joel, and Babette too, because answer to PBD podcast. Yeah, I mean, we should all do one. Me, Avi, Joel, and Babette should do a PBD. That's Patrick Bet David style podcast. Thanks for the super chat, mate. I appreciate you joining in. Let's see what other comments you guys have sent through. Tracy agrees with me. Thanks, Tracy. Arthur says base. I hope you're saying I'm base, mate. Thanks, mate. This is a great comment. I do concrete work with 3 different religions and we all share water bottles and food. Most barely care about any of this stuff, just want to make a good life here. I mean, really, that should be the way that this is handled in this country, right? But this is really about, a lot of this is about forcing people's particular views onto this conflict and putting pressure. Now, I've seen this before with many these type of wars where you have a terrorist regime, right? This is not a normal military regime. A normal country most likely would have surrendered by now. This is the truth, guys. Let's admit it. A typical country most likely would have surrendered by now, considering what they're up against, right? Especially if they're claiming like people are starving and it's genocide and all this stuff. You kind of surrender with the international world watching. Terrorists, not so much. They're not going to surrender. And what they really need and what they want is a propaganda win, because the way that they win is not through, beating Israel militarily. No, it's about putting pressure, international pressure on them, accusing them of war crimes, accusing them of genocide, and so on, to get the international world on side, to allow them the space and the breathing room to operate. Now, in the past, right, going back 20, 30, 40 years, right, a lot of these wars would already be done now because we don't have this type of social media aspect. We don't have all this international meddling and from around the world. And that may be a good or bad thing, right, depending on who you ask and the outcomes that we've seen in the past where there has been a lot of atrocities committed. And it's in a way, of course, in the human aspect of protecting human life, having attention on an issue is, of course, very important. But ask yourself this. We hear a lot about Israel, Palestine. We hear sometimes about Russia, Ukraine. At any given moment around the world, there's lots and lots, maybe 50, 60, 70, lots of different conflicts that happen, ethnic conflicts, especially in countries like Africa and parts of Asia. This kind of ethnic cleansing that goes on, these attacks against Christians and this wiping out of whole, villages that happens. But we hardly hear about those things. So we have to also, inquire in our minds why it is just certain particular wars are put in front of us, right? And all this plays into the fact that, as humans, right? As humans, we all have our biases, right? We all have things that we naturally, look at and say, hey, this is not good because of some connection we have to it. And in the West, because we have a lot of, migration from parts of the world, including the Middle East, and massive growing populations with influence, they highlight some of these issues more, and they're very effective at it, right? In France, Australia, Canada, the UK, if you have governments which can be more molded into listening to these demographics instead of listening to themselves first, you can have situations where France, for instance, recognizes a state in Palestine, where the US, under someone like Donald Trump, who doesn't listen to this stuff, who just plays it straight, will be like, no, we're doing what's in the interest of the West, the interest of the United States of America, and so on. Again, I'm not making judgments here. I'm just saying as an example of how these things happen. I did see a comment from Avi Yemeni before. He's probably watching my show to get some tips on how to do a proper show. Avi says Babette is too scared. I believe he's saying Senator Babette will not debate him. So come on, Senator Babette, we need you to debate Avi Yemeni. I will moderate. Come on the show. I know he's been asking for a few weeks now. He wants to debate. Do what John Ruddick did and come for a debate. Let's check the super chats out. We got one here from Long Dong John. Great nickname, mate. What is John Ruddick doing? Way to throw a big divisive bomb into your party, mate. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to answer for him. He'll be on tomorrow's opposition podcast on the debate, answering probably some of these questions. And the only thing I can comment on is the fact that I have seen a lot of libertarians, both here in Victoria and New South Wales, that I follow, being torn about this particular issue for sure. And it'll be interesting to hear what he says. Look, I still think that every person, politician, whatever it is, even if you've got a party allegiance, if you have a certain particular conviction, you should share it. Now, if it's incompatible with the party, then that's a matter for the party and an issue for the party. But if you have a certain view, you should freely express that without fear or favor. You should just say what you want to say, which is what I believe in. And obviously, I cop the consequences of that sometimes because, today a lot of people had a go at me, and that's just the reality of what we do when we talk about news issues, which are, controversial. Rob, who I know has certain particular views, do you think Bibi will be scapegoated eventually, or how do you guys as Zionists see this coming to an end? Look, mate, I can't give exact answers for those type of questions. And if you're saying I'm a Zionist because I believe in the sovereignty or the right of the state of Israel to exist, I believe in the right of the state of Israel to exist the same way that I believe in the right of the state of the nation of Australia to exist. I understand history to the extent that certain nations are created in different ways, which might be complicated for people to accept, but that is sometimes the reality. And if you want to change those things, yeah, you could do what Hamas did and maybe start a war over it. But if you're getting your ass handed to you in that war, then maybe things aren't going your way. And that's just the reality of the world as well. It's been happening for a very long time. Thousands and thousands of years since the beginning of time. And if you can't fight these wars, don't start them. And we will see, I believe, some type of conclusion. It won't be something that everyone is happy with. I think it's always going to be some type of negotiated type of conclusion. Trump is very adamant. The US is very adamant. But it favors more. It definitely favors more Israel and the West, who hold the power in this particular situation, who hold the cards. And you've already seen all the Arab states in the area come out and condemn Hamas to the extent of having to, disarm and get the hell out of there so they can move forward. And if this, so-called organization that is, government type representative of the people of Palestine don't want to do that, well, that's on them as well. Sometimes your leaders are responsible for the things that happen to the people in that place. And they hold the power. They're the ones negotiating. And they've been given multiple outs. And if they don't want to keep taking it, then naturally there's going to be consequences to that. Okay. The question was more if Bibi will be thrown under the bus. I don't know. I don't think so. At least in that country, I think he will be seen as a very important leader going into the future. As in, historically, he'll be looked at upon fondly, like many Western leaders who were a part of, World War II or like a Winston Churchill type thing. Consider it from that particular history. And if you ask people about Winston Churchill today, they will say that he genocided a whole heap of people for whatever, in India or different parts of the places, right? So these historical figures will always have questions over them, and the actions that they take and the decisions that they make will always be judged. Same for Trump, right? Trump will be thrown into that same category. Whether he's right or wrong is not what I'm judging here. I'm just telling you this is kind of how it goes down. I think the public opinion is very much so opposed to Israel, especially with the youth in the West. Yes, but the youth in the West are more often not these days retarded. They believe in all types of things. They believe in, you can change your gender in multiple times and so on. So I don't think the youth in the West is actually a good barometer to what is either right or wrong, for instance. But sure, does it have a play on things? Yeah, obviously it does. Let's check the super chats, guys. We've got a few more super chats. 055 Pinks getting in there with super chats. What's the deal with Babbitt and Avi? They're good mates. Babbitt and Avi, I mean, they're good mates. I think they should debate each other. I think it will resolve some of the questions that they have for each other. Is it an issue? It is an issue that affects us, though, as we are US allies. Yeah, I mean, we are US allies. All things that the US are involved in do affect us. But the broader implications of what's happening there, I don't think. We're not intimately involved in what's happening there. We're just one of these countries that puts out statements and appears to be important in terms of putting international pressure. Does the Benjamin Netanyahu or the Hamas care about what Albanese is saying when he says release the hostages or end the starvation or whatever? No, they don't care. Like if you believe they actually care, if you believe that these leaders in those countries care about what someone like Albanese says, mate, come on, you got to get your brain checked. Tika bro, yep. Why does no one talk about Africans enslaving their own people and enabling the slaves trade by selling their own? I mean, yeah, this is, of course, all historically verifiable information, and it's still going on today, the slave trade in parts. But a lot of the focus is on bringing down the West, on the history of the West, for instance, on the history of colonialism, and they blame white people for everything. There's a lot of white guilt going around. But a lot of this, again, is enabled by white academia and the West. It's not happening in a vacuum of sorts. It's very premeditated, pre-planned, if that's the correct term to use for it. And, we're just told to focus, look over here, look there. Don't look at all this stuff that's happening, in Asia and Africa where they're still enslaving people and doing all types of horrific crimes. Don't worry about this type of oppression of women in the Middle East, right? Don't worry about what the Taliban's doing in Afghanistan. The Taliban is great. This is the kind of stuff that people say, oh, Iran, the regime, that's great. Don't worry about that. But, Donald Trump, he's a dictator. He's destroying women. People in America have no rights. Australia's, they have no rights and so on, right? This is the nonsense that we have to put up with. All in all, the West, through the Enlightenment and many other periods of, I guess, different various types of enlightenments, especially thanks to Christianity more broadly, I believe, personally, we have become, great societies who are, caring, loving, and look out for one another, despite, obviously the flaws that we do have. But overall, we are very, humanitarian in our approach. We got a comment here from Madeline Love. Julia Gillard did her misogyny talk at the same time she destroyed female sex-based rights, and we're being called colonizers at the same time as we're being colonized with massive migration. Yes. I mean, there's a few different themes there, Madeline, that you've kind of interwoven. But I do believe the West is being colonized. I know people don't like to, talk about it in those terms, but in a way, that's kind of, what's happening if the levers aren't controlled in a particular direction, which involves stopping mass immigration. Things are changing rapidly. I'm not sure, Julie, exactly who you're speaking to, but yeah, you're saying I can't believe you believe that Hamas are known evil terrorists. Yeah, if you're asking me, definitely Hamas are evil terrorists. Terrorist regimes do not deserve to be at the same table as, normal, democratically elected, Western-style governments. We're not on the same level. Yes, you can make complaints about the West, but no, we're not the same as these terrorist regimes. No, and if you're thinking in these terms, well, then go over there. Join Hamas, join some terrorist regime, go to Iran, go to the Taliban, wherever you want to go. go live there. If you're sitting here in Australia and complaining about these things, you don't understand the freedom that you do have in this country. 0555 Pink says, if USA needed US troops to support Israel's affect us. Yes, but like there's no troops needed in this particular conflict. If there wasn't this much kind of, weird international, eyes on this particular thing, this war would have been done a long time ago. Like there's no help, there's no requirement for international involvement. No one's asking for international involvement from anywhere. But I do understand if Australia has gotten involved in Middle Eastern wars in the past at the behest of the US, and that's been not a good thing for Australia. So anyway, guys, let's keep moving on. Thanks for all the comments. I do get sidetracked reading all your comments, and I appreciate all of you guys joining in today. I will just check in on what other stories that I've got saved to discuss today. I've probably gone on a bit of a tangent here with the discussions into Palestine and Israel. And look, it's not really like I talk about it like almost every day because that's what we talk about in this country. Like there's so many issues going on in this country that affects the people living in this country. Unfortunately, that get swept under the rug with this particular issue. And again, people will argue that, the humanitarian crisis deserves our eyes. And I agree, we should be paying heed to what's happening overseas in terms of helping people. But a lot of issues in this country get swept under the rug. And, this is kind of all our leaders talk about it. And then it forces us to talk about this as well, because everyone is arguing about this issue. Like everyone is arguing about what side they support and, what's right and wrong and so on. So we're kind of just forced into this, it's like Groundhog Day, right? It's like Groundhog Day. But I did save some other stories, so let me just bring them up. Just give me a couple of minutes here while I go back and pull up these stories, guys. Again, guys, this is Rukshan on X. I do this show on Monday nights and Wednesday nights. You can follow me on Facebook, X, and YouTube at The Real Rukshan, and I stream the shows there. I will figure out eventually how to stream this on Instagram as well for all my soy followers. If I have any followers left on Instagram after everyone unfollows me for having an opinion. All the free speech warriors don't like to hear things that they don't agree with, which is just weird. I'll do one more story. I think I'll do one more story and call it a night. But this is kind of the same theme, right? I just want to talk about this particular story. This is the Melbourne City Council. Let me try to pull this up, actually. Okay, revealed. Melbourne City Council hatched secret plan to shut historic Cook's Cottage, documents show. The City of Melbourne hatched a secret plan to close Cook's Cottage tourist attraction in Fitzroy Gardens amid concerns the landmark did not align with its Indigenous reconciliation plan, new documents show. Picture of something they kicked down. Melbourne City Council hatched a secret plan to close Cook's Cottage tourist attraction in Fitzroy Gardens amid concerns the landmark celebrated colonial heritage over Indigenous culture. Yeah, it's like you can't have any, like the way that these people are thinking now, you can't have any type of history of Australia related to the British history, the settlement of this country. All of that has to be forgotten. Like that's what they want to do. They want to erase all of it. Let's keep going. Council officers in 2023 proposed shutting down the cottage to visitors and leave it as a historic monument. Documents obtained under Freedom of Information laws found. State Liberal MP David Davis slammed the covert plan to slam the door shut as shameful, and it denied a key part of Victorian history. Council review found that some people view the two-story brick structure as a symbol of colonization and that it has become a target of protest and vandalism. Documents said the attraction did not align with the town hall's Indigenous reconciliation plan and truth-telling commitments. Just want to pause there. Like, if you want to talk about Indigenous reconciliation plans and truth-telling commissions, like, of course. Then if the part about Captain Cook, right? And this is just, I think, Captain Cook's parents' house that they bought to Melbourne and put there as a monument or a statue that we can remember the history by. If you don't like that, very fundamental, almost like starting point history of Australia when it comes to Captain Cook, that means everything else that comes after him, they also want to get rid of, right? So if you allow these very vital, the baseline histories of Australia to be removed, like someone like a figure like Captain Cook to be wiped out from Australian history. That means all history coming after him, that comes after him, also needs to be wiped out. So, pretty much means everything goes. Overwhelmingly, accounts of Captain Cook's voyages in the public domain are driven by perceptions of Cook as a discoverer, and the realities of the voyages and voices of First Nation communities excluded in favor of one-sided European telling of his history and Cook's legacy, the Council review said. Mr. Davis obtained hundreds of pages of Council papers via a VCAT appeal after the Council had refused to make the documents public. This is nothing but a shameful attempt to cancel a vital part of Victorian and national history, he said. Captain James Cook was the first European explorer to sight the east coast of Australia when on April 19, 1770, he shipped the Endeavour past the Victorian headland that he named Point Hicks. The cottage acknowledged the explorer's great achievements, Mr. Davis said. So yeah, look, you can see that here. They do graffiti this particular building here and there. The Antifa left-wing nut jobs, the people that Nasser Mashni probably supports, because he doesn't want to condemn the burning of the Australian flag, and he believes in always was, always will be, probably wants these type of monuments gone as well, right? It's a part of that same movement of anti-Australian, anti-colonial, anti-Western sentiment that is seeping into our societies. And yeah, I don't think, if you let this cottage, as superficial as it sounds, if this cottage is gone, then I think Australia is, getting fast tracked to having its complete history removed and rewritten. Look, yeah, Lucy says Captain Cook landed in Cooktown. Why is his cottage in Melbourne? I believe this is his parents' cottage. Perhaps he was born here. I don't know, but for whatever reason, they brought it down as a historic landmark to celebrate Captain Cook. I don't see any problem with that. He is a central figure in the history of modern day Australia. He is one of the pivotal figures, to be honest. So I don't see any problem with this country celebrating Captain Cook, especially if we are in a so-called free society where we have people now running around with Hamas flags and Islamic State flags and pictures of the Iranian terrorist Khamenei, so-called leader of Iran. If we can have all those symbols in Australia and these things are loved by these groups, why do they hate Captain Cook so much? You got to ask yourself these questions. What is wrong with Captain Cook? Yeah, it is very small. I kind of do a lot of I used to do a lot of photo shoots in Fitzroy Gardens for weddings because it's one of the only places in Victoria. Like a lot of these parks, you have to get permits. Fitzroy Gardens and a few others, big parks, major parks, you don't have to get a permit there. So Captain Cook's Cottage is always there, and I have done a few photos around that area as well. It is a tiny, tiny place, but that's probably how people used to live back then. Let's have a look if I've got any other super chats. No other super chats, guys. But look, I will try to read some of your comments now. If you have any questions for me, actually drop them in the comments now, and I'll try to answer your questions for the next 10 minutes or so before I end this show at 10:30. This is a good comment. Aussies as a whole made a mistake by not wanting to work for council, so they have employed all the worst kind of people. Yeah, look, councils attract a lot of left-wing progressive nut jobs. A lot of these kind of purple-haired freaks, I'm sorry if you just have purple hair for fun, but there are a lot of these kind of progressive weirdos who seem to end up in council, and their main thing becomes decolonizing Australia, putting up colorful rainbow flags everywhere, talking about nuclear weapons, talking about Palestine and things like this, which have nothing to do with their role in council. But I have seen recently a move by a lot of people, more kind of normal people that I would say, get involved in council policies because they understand that it starts from there. So if you can get into the councils, and have some effect within your local communities, you can stop a lot of these things happening in your local community. So you have to get into the councils. Anna says Rome killed Christ, not Israel. Well, that is not a discussion that I want to get into today, but yeah, there is a lot of different opinions on this. But maybe that wasn't the way it was meant to be in terms of Christ actually dying, if you read the Bible as well. DMAC says it's amazing to see how much we have grown inside. I'm not sure exactly what you refer to, DMAC, but yeah, if something's growing and you're amazed by it, I think it might be a good thing. By their logic, get rid of buildings and cars and every other modern tech, go back to the Stone Age, right? Yeah, exactly. They're very selective in their outrage. For instance, they will protest against Israel tech companies, for instance, and take iPhones, and a lot of the parts within an iPhone, for instance, come from Israeli tech firms. So it's just complete nonsense. They're all over the place, these guys. They're not consistent with their particular views. Are you familiar with what the city of Whittlesea did to their mayor, Aidan McClendon? Yes, we are. We actually had him on the episode of the Opposition podcast, so you can watch that. I think that was about 3 or 4 episodes back. So we did talk to Aidan about what happened to him. DMAX says humans. Yes, I mean population increase. Even though we do have a population decline technically in parts of the West, we do have a lot more humans in the world today for sure. If we erase Cook, we erase all the need for a treaty. Yeah, Paul says Rome acted at the behest of the Jewish Sanhedrin and a crowd on the verge of rioting. Yeah, I mean that famous part of Pontius Pilate washing his hands and so on. If you guys aren't watching that, I'm actually watching The Chosen. I'm up to season 5, I believe, and we're up to that kind of stage in Jesus' story. It's actually a great show, The Chosen. It's on Amazon Prime. It's available for free, I believe, if you have Amazon Prime, and they also have the Chosen app where you can watch that particular show. I think it's a great, modern interpretation. Of course, they take liberties with telling the story of Jesus, but if you're new to all this and you want a kind of a different understanding of it, there's the Chosen there to watch as well. Get educated before talking shit, you infant. I don't know who you're referring to, mate. Here we go. The Jews with Romans, Pontius Pilate sentenced Jesus to the cross. You moron, the Quran didn't exist, you moron. I'm not sure exactly. So this is why I don't try to get too much into religious debates about different interpretations that people may have or have not. If I was doing a show on religious theology or something and I'm talking about religion all the time, I'd be happy to do that. But I will read some of your comments here and there. Yeah, it looks like you guys are having a discussion within the comments. Look, guys, it's almost 10:30. I'm probably going to wrap up for today's show. As I was saying earlier, you can catch us tomorrow on the Opposition podcast at 7 p.m. with Avi Yemeni and John Ruddick. We're doing a debate. So let me just pull up that screen so you can see what we're going to be doing. There you go. Avi Yemeni versus John Ruddick, from Zionist to pro-Hamas, the debate that could break the Libertarian Party. So that's tomorrow night, 7 p.m. on the Opposition podcast. Thank you again, guys, for joining me today for Rukshan on X. I appreciate all your comments and your super chats and your involvement in today's show. As you can tell, I'm slurring a little bit today. I did have a bit of a long day, but I did promise that I will attempt to do these shows consistently on Mondays and Wednesdays. So whether I'm tired or not or whatever it is, I will do these shows. And it's a casual show. I read your comments. I try to answer your questions, and we talk about the news as it happens. Catherine says, Rukshan Fernando, are you talking questions beforehand? No, we'll be taking questions throughout the show. Catherine, for you especially, because you do so many super chats, and you were talking about getting a membership perhaps. We haven't got such a facility yet. If you do drop any comments, because I'm in control of the comments tomorrow, even if you don't do a super chat, I'll keep an eye out for any comments that you do, because you are such a great contributor. And you were talking about doing a membership. So we'll talk to you about that at some other point. DMAC, Rukshan Fernando, your chat goes off on lives. You do. There's a group of regulars that go crazy. Look, I really appreciate you guys that regularly jump in here. It's great to grow a community. You guys get to know me a little bit differently as well than perhaps that people on Instagram who are crying about me know me, because they're all just a bunch of sooks. But you get a bit more of an idea of my views. Rob, you're never going to be happy with my views on this, mate. You have a particular view, and you probably you view Hamas as heroes. I don't know. You're entitled to that view, mate. But not everyone's going to support terrorism, mate. So that's just the way it is. So thanks, everyone. Anthony had to get Trump's fault, and I think I'll end with that particular comment. We can, well, not we, but everyone does blame Donald Trump for everything. But I think he's doing a great job. I think we're going to miss Trump after the next, 2 to 3 years when he's done, and there's no more Donald Trump. The world will miss him. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining in again. I appreciate all your comments, and see you guys all next time.